Have you ever stopped to think about the fans behind a band? What is it about the music that keeps fans coming back for more? Or is there more? My name is Renae Lipsmeyer, and I am the host of this podcast, The Space Between Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the fans of the Dave Matthews Band. Each week, a fellow DMB fan joins the show to discuss their journey with the band. Welcome to the Space Between Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Space Between Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the fans behind a band that has been making music for over 30 years. So if you've never listened to this podcast before, we talk about one band on this podcast, and that's about it. Sometimes we'll mention other bands because we love other music, but for the most part, this podcast is about the Dave Matthews Band. So if you don't know much about them, get ready. You are going to learn a lot in this next hour. And so if this is your first time listening again, every week I have a new fan of the Dave Matthews Band come on the show to tell us their journey with this band. And so of course this week is like every week. I have a fan of the Dave Matthews Band, but this fan, I just can't wait for you guys to hear this story because it is unique. Every story is unique. Every story has these beautiful parts of it. But you're going to understand why I say unique here in just a little bit when we meet our guest. Guys, I want you to say hello, and I'm going to have him say who he is. Well, just tell us who you are. Where in the world are you? And then we're going to chat just in a little bit about how in the world you met the Dave Matthews Band.
My name's Michael DiPonio, and I'm from Bloomfield.
Awesome. So have you lived in Michigan your whole life?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. You don't have, I'm listening to you. We've been talking a little bit before I started, recording this. And honestly, you don't have what I consider a typical Michigan accent. Do you feel that way?
Well, when you grow up here and you don't
you
feel
don't
like you have an accent.
You don't hear it. And maybe as this interview goes on, I'm going to be like, there it is. Because it'll come out in certain words, right? There are certain things that someone will say. And then you're like, there it is. Well, thank you so much for being willing to be on this show. I'm excited about telling your unique story because you yourself have had a very long history with this band. So take us back to when was it that you first heard this music or heard about this band so that you could get to the music?
Well, I feel like I started to hear about them in 96 with Crash.
Yeah.
But again, I really didn't go to any concerts of theirs or anything like that.
Yeah.
My love of concerts stems from actually the beginning with my sister's 10 years older than me.
Uh-huh.
So she took me to all these concerts in the 70s. When I was
hell yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8. So
damn, yeah.
Yeah, luckily.
That's amazing.
But I do distinctly remember hearing a couple songs of theirs on the radio, and they sounded interesting, but nothing like I was gonna I got to see this band.
Right.
But people kept telling me because they knew I loved concerts, and I love going to shows where bands will play different songs.
Yeah.
A lot of the same bands that I would see year after year. They play songs from their new album, but the whole show's the same. I mean, I know what the last song's going to be and all that. And so I had friends say to me, you should check out this band, Dave Matthews Band. You should see them in concert. Because I'm like, oh, yeah, I know some of their songs. Are like, no, they're much different in concert.
Uh-huh.
And so I distinctly remember my sister, actually, I was in real estate for a long time. And my sister that I'm talking about, she was a manager of a candy store, and she needed somebody at night who was an adult because there were high school age kids. So they needed an adult, right, for the last few hours. So I remember having to work one night in 1998 because basically everybody that worked there that was that age was going to the Dave Matthews Band concert here.
Yeah.
And they were telling me how great they were and all that. And you really should see them because they do songs differently. And I like long songs. I like instrumental stuff.
Yeah.
So finally, the next year is when I saw them in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually an interesting story. They were playing 2 shows here at the Palace where the Detroit Pistons played There's no longer a venue there. They were playing Friday, Saturday. And to show you how new I was at this, I just got tickets for Friday night. Of course, I realize
Oh, of
now
course
that
you
I
did. You
never
were like,
do.
it's going to be the same show.
Well, not just that. I just like, I don't know if I know them that much or whatever. And now it's like, I would never go
Sure.
anywhere where they could play
Oh
5
my
shows.
God,
And I'm like, I'm
no.
going to all 5. So
I mean, you got to commit, and commit means all of them.
that's right. Because you don't know what you're going to miss if you go to only one of them.
There's like that FOMO for real.
That's right. And I didn't know that back then. But so the first night I was supposed to go was Friday. However, the Pistons had a playoff game that night. And I didn't even realize. Now I realize like what a big deal this would be. They moved the show to Thursday. And so like, I mean, I didn't realize like people travel to see them and all that stuff.
Oh,
Maybe they didn't as much
I honestly knew nothing about this. Yes.
But that would screw everybody's plans, right? But I went Thursday. I had no problem because I was here anyway. Right. And then interestingly, I remember Dave saying like, he was, y'all interested? You go to the basketball game tomorrow night? Because we were going to go to the basketball game tomorrow night. And nobody really cared about the Pistons back then. It was a first round series. They weren't really good then. But I remember going to that show, singing the songs, and I knew from listening to them, I would say most of them, but there were some I did not know at all.
Yeah.
And then Friday night, I did go to the Piston game, and actually they showed them on the screen that they were in one of the boxes there. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Of course they would do that because they were playing Saturday night. And I remember kicking around going, maybe I should go Saturday night too. I didn't. I guess I don't regret it now, seeing all these shows. I probably would have been like, man, I should have seen that. I would have seen that song then or whatever.
Yeah,
but they were great. They were great live. What everybody had told me was true. And I just remember, I remember kicking around going, maybe I should go to some shows over the summer. But I was so new at this stuff and I didn't know about, traveling to see bands and stuff like that.
Right.
So
I'll never forget the first time I heard that people travel to see the Dave Matthews Band. I was actually, I guess it would have been early 2000s. I had a friend that loved the Dave Matthews Band. I loved them too, of course. But again, I was young in the early 2000s. That was just, traveling was just outside of like my world at that time. So we would hear when people would travel. And I remember they went to like Arizona. And I was like, why would you go to Arizona? And they were like, oh, to see the Dave Matthews Band. And I was like, what the fuck? Are they not playing here? Like, what? Why are you going to Arizona? And so then I kind of like kept hearing about it. And it was just blowing my mind that people did that. Fast forward many years, we see that it's a real deal. So when was the first time that you were like, you know what? I'm going to get in my car, or I'm going to get on a plane, and I'm going to go see this band that I've already seen?
Well, the next year. I joined the warehouse in 99. So I'm not a first year member, second year. And it's weird. I joined it not thinking like, okay, I'm going to go to all these stores or whatever. I joined it like just, all right. I know I want to see them. I know that I'd heard that you can get tickets through them, through the warehouse or whatever at least. So I figured, all right, let me do that. So I think back then, if I remember correctly, and other people may know this, can remember, I feel like they had series and you could pick like 5 in each series. So a tour would be like maybe 3 or 4 series, which I mean, it is that way now, but you could only pick 5. So I remember I picked the first 2 shows in 2000 and then a couple others after that. And I got denied for a couple of them, but I did get tickets for the first 2 shows in 2000. It was at, I know all these places by their original names. So it was the Polaris. It was the Polaris Amphitheater. They started in 2002 there in Columbus.
Okay.
And so I never thought about flying for a few years, actually. It was just driving. But, when you live where I live, and I tell people that, like, how do you go to all these shows? Are you like in New York where they play all the time? I'm like, look, Michigan's easy because you can drive to the left and you can drive to the right. I mean, you can go east, you can go west. We're more in the middle here. So that's what I did. I drove to Columbus. I drove to Indianapolis. I mean, those are short rides for us.
Yeah.
And then they did like a second leg in August. They started at Alpine. I went there. And then I went to Blossom because that's close to me. That's Cuyahoga Falls.
Yeah.
And then I should say I did fly actually my first year in 2000. I have one of my oldest friends, who was one friend who never saw the Dave Matthews Band, but said, "I know your musical tastes. you got to see this band. I bet you would love them. So when I told him that I finally saw them, I said to my buddy, I'm like, hey, I'm coming down to Dallas for 2 shows. So I'm going to get us tickets. He's like, all right, sounds good. We'll go. So, I mean, he never became a huge fan, but he thought that they were great live too. So I did fly my first year. I did go to Dallas. And I remember those shows specifically because Bella Fleck and the Flecktones opened. And so Jeff Coffin joined them on stage for, actually all of them joined the first night. I don't want to get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure the first night they all joined for 41 and it was like 25 minutes, which just blew me away. And I loved the next night they all joined for Two Step and that was like 25 minutes. And I just remember that was great.
Wow. Yes. Yes. And I mean, you said that you're a fan of extended versions of songs. And so this was literally like everything you could have like write down your perfect band. And I mean, as you were naming them off, I was like, yeah, the Dave Matthews Band is literally everything you were looking for in music.
And I realized that a couple of years later, I'm like, this is the band that I was looking for.
Yes.
I mean, I still like all these other bands, but I mean, you know,
of course,
you don't know what you're going to get. I mean, and every song is different than what it is. Not every song, but a lot of the songs are different than they are on the album, which I love. Yeah. And through the years, songs are like people always ask, you know, how can you see this band? You know, some people who don't get it, and there's people, my friends that don't get it.
Oh, all my friends don't get it.
Yeah, like, and they're like, well, you've seen this, you know, even when you're like, I've seen Two Step how many times? They're like, yeah, but it's the same song. I'm like, oh, but it's not the same.
It's completely different.
I can tell you what I heard in 01 is totally different than 6, is totally different than 9, is totally different than 10, is totally different than now. I mean, people take different solos. It's so, and also, not all, but a lot of songs are like that. And that's what I love.
Right. And I think for me, and it sounds like for you, like that's the hook for me that keeps me coming back. I mean, there's so many layers to that answer, but like one of the reasons why I keep coming back for more is because I don't know what's next, right? Like they keep us reeled in. And we were just kind of talking about that before we hit record, because of course we're recording on a show night. First of all, how dare we not be glued right to our computers, just, you know, watching the couch tour. So thank you, Michael, for taking a night off.
Sure.
But we are watching it. If you can see this on YouTube, I've got the hub pulled up. I know what has been played. They actually did just play Spaceman. So I love that. But you know, we're still connected to what's going on in the world. But
any tour debuts? I'm not seeing it.
I'd have to go back through. But we're doing a lot of things in this interview. And so one of the things that I did before we hit record was I put some messages out on my socials that was like, hey, I'm about to interview a fan that has been, and we haven't talked about this so far, Michael. So I'm gonna tell everybody, some information about you. But I told everyone on social media, I said, I'm about to interview a fan of the Dave Matthews Band who's been to over 500 shows. 500, Michael. How does that sound to you first, now that you like hear other people saying it? How's that sound?
I mean, it's a lot, I know. But I mean,
it is a lot.
I don't know. I love it. I mean, I remember, like you were talking about, so the first year I saw 1, the next year I saw 10, then it went to 19. And then it was just like, I mean, it was never really a number, but it was like, how many shows can I go? Because you're chasing songs at that point.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, I mean, I want to see, like, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there when they play Spoon for the first time that I could see it. I don't want to miss it.
Right.
So, I mean, it was a lot of that. And it was a lot of, I mean, you see different things. You see different parts of the country you never would.
Oh God, yes.
And then you become friends with people that are these different parts. So you got to go back to see them.
Yes.
So it became more than just about seeing the song, seeing the band.
It definitely
that's always the draw to me.
Definitely
seeing the shows.
Yes.
But it's interesting. Go ahead.
No, so in part of my question when I put out on socials is like, okay, I want to ask him some fun questions, and I want the other fans of the Dave Matthews Band to have that opportunity to also insert their questions. And so I've got some questions that I think is going to help complement your story, kind of take us through your journey, because of course there's no way that we can talk about all of the shows you've been to. So we're going to try to just surround that story and get some of the tiny stories within your big story. So thank you to everyone that sent me a question. Everyone was really excited about sending you these questions, Michael. So I hope that it is super fun for you too. But okay, in no particular order, I like this question. This is from Keith Hogel. Keith, thank you for submitting this question. Keith said, of over the 30 years that the music has evolved, and I think we'll all agree that it has done that, how has the tailgating evolved?
I hate to say it, but you're asking the wrong person that one.
Are you not a tailgater?
I'm not a huge tailgater. I mean, I'm like saying, I'm really not. I mean,
that's okay.
I will say this though. I mean, because obviously I get to the shows sometimes early and I see people. There are definitely different games that I see. Like I remember, I mean, obviously I don't know if cornhole started before or after, but I know that was a huge thing in the parking lot.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I remember it. I remember at one point in Alpine, I don't know the years, but I'm going to describe this. You guys think I'm crazy, whatever. But you know the game where you've got like a string and two balls on it, and then you throw it and it's got to wrap itself around.
Yes.
Okay, so I remember seeing that for the first time at a Dave Matthews Band concert, like parking lot tailgate.
Yes.
And then just recently, my buddy and I were at Alpine, and I can't remember the name of this. It was like Skoll or something like that. It sounded like a Scandinavian game. I think they described it to us, where you had 5 blocks set up, and you had other blocks that you were trying to knock over, and then there was one block in the middle, and after you knocked over your opponent's blocks, you had to knock that one over. So that to me has evolved. I mean, there's just a ton of games that people play in these parking lots. But
the tailgating is legit.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I mean, there are places that are crazy. I'm just not a big tailgater. I mean, I'll go early, but I kind of take my time. I do things like I like to see the cities. And then I'll get to the parking lot. I mean, the older I get, I like to get there earlier. That is true.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the majority of my shows in the 2000s and the 10s, I got there probably not when gates opened, like maybe 20 minutes so that I could get inside before the opening band came on.
Yeah.
Because I did make sure I saw, for the most part, all the opening band, because I did love that. I do kind of miss that a little bit, actually.
Well, we're going to get to that because I know that somebody submitted the question about opening bands. But I love your answer just because it does paint that picture that not everybody loves the same things when it comes to the Dave Matthews Band. I mean, this fan group is, a bunch of different people's doing life a bunch of different ways. But yeah, we've come together to listen to this music, and I love that story. So yeah, I have seen a lot in tailgatings. And even though you're not a tailgater, I'm not necessarily a tailgater either. Like I might want to be out there for an hour, maybe, like walking around. I don't know. It depends on the temperature that it is outside, because I don't like to sweat either. Like I'm just that girl. But, for instance, this is controversial, but I don't like the Gorge. People can't believe that. They're like, what, Renae, are you talking about? I know. But I'm just saying that to say that like everybody has like their things that they like and things that they don't. And so that's beautiful. So Keith, thank you for that question. God no. I mean, people, all kinds of different people. I love that.
That's right. That.
Okay. So this question is from Patrice Lowry. She said, this is a very interesting question. I love this question because, and before I read this, just keep it. I feel like I need to give it a little bit of like warning or preface or something. But like when I say the word relationships, I mean like anything, like your friends, your mom, your dad, your cousins, like relationships in general. We're not necessarily talking about like a romantic relationship. But Patrice asked, has your love for this band and your commitment, because you have had a certain kind of commitment with this band when going to over 500 shows, has it ever put a strain on any relationships? Your friends just thought you were crazy, or like has there ever been some kind of tested relationships because of your fanhood?
Not really.
That's great. I mean, that's the answer I want.
No, not really. I mean, there are some fans. There are some friends of mine that don't understand. Like you really got to go see them again. Like, I mean,
we all have those friends, right?
I've missed. I mean, I've missed certain things. And other events in other friends of mine life because I'm actually at one of the Dave Matthews band concerts. Right. So that, I mean, but nobody's ever really held it against me, or however you could
Right.
say, if you want to say
That's
it that way.
wonderful. That's wonderful.
But no, it really hasn't put any strain on any kind of relationship or anything like
That's
that.
awesome.
Mm-mm.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then her second question was just, do you have any children?
No.
No, no children.
No.
Okay. I mean,
No.
that is like one question that I think everybody would be thinking in the back of their mind is like, I'm sure there's a great way to do it, but like, how do you as a parent go to 500 shows? Like, do you take your kids with you? Like, what does your life look like? Because, it's just, again, finding out how different people live and how they make it all work. And we dig those stories. And so,
No, I get it. No, but I don't,
yeah,
no kids, nothing like that. So that
yeah,
makes it a lot easier to go to
it
over
does
500
make it a little
shows.
bit easier.
So
Yes, or a lot bit easier. Yeah, it does make it a lot easier. I think, but I don't know. Okay. So this question is from Arhelia Welch. Thank you so much for submitting this. She said, at what point did you decide that you were all in and you were going to go to as many as life allowed you to go to? Or was there a moment, or did it just kind of keep going?
I don't know. It kind of kept going. I mean,
Yeah.
there are definitely times where I can, well, 03, I kept getting songs I'd never seen before. So I just kept trying to go to more.
Yeah.
One point, I mean, it's later, but one point I remember in 2010 when they said that they were going to take 2011 off. I had already, that's the year I saw the most shows in a year. But I just kept adding because I was like, I got to see as many, because if they're going to take out 2011 off, and then of course they did the Caravan. But I mean, I don't know if I was already all in by then, but that just. That made me even more in, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Okay, so this question is from Michael Twigo. Thank you so much for submitting your question on Instagram. This question is, outside of the big four. Now, what he considers the big four in this question is the Gorge, Alpine, SPAC, and Deer Creek. So outside of those four.
I agree with all those, by the way.
Yay, Michael. Okay, so outside of those four, where would you suggest seeing the band and why?
I suggest seeing the band and why. I'm assuming it's places that they still play.
Sure, yeah. Like if you were telling someone that had not been, like, where would you say, you know what, this is where you need to go, and why would you say that?
Well, I would look at it at a place they always play 2 shows at, because I think, you get the most obviously out of that. You want to hear it. You want to hear as many songs as you can. And I preface it by saying I've heard great things about Guilford, but I've never been there, so I can't speak on that.
I want to go. Everybody says it's wonderful.
But honestly, places that they play great shows at, I think, and the shows this year, although there was a little weather, West Palm Beach, the heat is, for somebody like from Michigan, I don't know how people go to shows down there. And I mean, like 2 years ago, I remember I was texting a buddy, and he's like, "How you doing down there?" And I'm like, "I think I'm melting."
Yeah.
I mean, this is that warm there.
Literally, like.
But they play great shows there, I think.
They do.
And it's a cool venue. I mean, you got to remember, coming from up north, I mean, a place that's got palm trees in their venue is really cool.
Yeah,
to somebody
absolutely.
Like me.
Because you can fit in the beach, you can fit in, like, there's so much to do there. So like when you go to see them at West Palm Beach, it's like a true vacation. Yes, you can vacation anywhere, but this is like that beach destination concert, which is just really awesome.
Yes. And another place I'll say is, although they don't play there all the time, I don't think they played there in like maybe 5 years, but it was kind of a regular stop in a way. The Berkeley Theater the Greek Theater in Berkeley, California.
I have heard that.
I went there for twice when they played 3 shows. 08, I think, and 14. I mean, that was so cool. I mean, it was small. It was so small. Yeah. And it was just on the campus of Cal, and I just thought it was really cool.
Absolutely.
But if they play there again, I would say go there.
Go there.
That's cool. Yes.
But West Palm Beach, this was my very first year to go to West Palm Beach. And because the reason why I went is because everyone had always said, you have to go. You have to go. The shows are great. The shows are great, right? Like there was just never anyone that said otherwise. And so when given the chance, which this year, West Palm Beach just happened to be show 2 and show 3 of the start of the US tour. Yeah. And they started in Florida, in Tampa. So I was like, well, if you're going to be in Tampa, like might as well just make that trip on down because it's the weekend. Like, why not? For me, I'm kind of like you. I don't have palm trees here. I don't have an ocean. Like we have lakes and hills. Like we have, that's what we have. And so I'm all ready to go to Florida. And
And
honestly, go ahead.
for those out there that do the tailgating, I've heard and I've seen it's a pretty. I mean, other if you can deal with 96-degree heat,
It's hot.
people love to tailgate there, and so
Yeah, they do. They do. We really lucked out this year, though. And we heard everyone say this was the best year we could have gone to because, of course, doing it early May versus like
yes,
June, July makes such a big difference in the temperature. And so it actually rained night two of West Palm Beach, and there was a weather break.
yes.
But you know what? Honestly, it was such a beautiful time. The weather was amazing. And so West Palm Beach, I got really lucky of this being my first year. So I love this next question. This one made me giggle when I read it. So I hope I don't butcher your last name, but this question is from Mike Witowski. This is your friend. I know it is because this is the one that said this is a great question. So Mike Witowski, am I saying it correct? Did I get close? Witowski.
Yes, you got it.
I did it better. Number one, and I can't wait to hear the answer. What is your post-show Taco Bell order?
He knows the answer. Whatever the box is.
Whatever the box is.
Yeah, because it's different. So, depending on where we got, what month we're in, I just tell him, just get the box because it's different. So I want to, like the Dave Matthews Band, you don't, you don't always know what you're going to get in it each month. So that's why I like getting that.
That is great. I mean, Taco Bell is definitely one of those things probably most of us stop at because after a concert, there's not a lot of things open. And so we've got like McDonald's, we've got Taco Bell, if you can find those. And if the line's not a mile long, I mean, it is so much to get food. And so Taco Bell is always one of those places because they're open like forever. And so, you can, I love Taco Bell. We all have our post-show orders. So that's a funny question. Now, second to that, he asked, you get to add 3 songs to a guaranteed set list at the Gorge. What would those 3 songs be? And man, that's a hard thing to just ask you and expect an answer because, of course, I know that you would need months of planning for that. I'd be like, dude, I'm going to have to think about that. So to ask you to tell me right now is hard. But are there any songs that you would just be like, yes, I want that on the set list?
Well, he's not going to like my answer.
Well, but, okay.
I mean, I guess there's 2 ways you can answer this. One would be what they could play, what they really could play, and then one what they never have played.
Well, yeah,
I've never seen Dreams of Our Fathers. They've never played that, but I would
love that.
I mean, do I ask them to play that? I mean, I don't know.
I would love that.
I honestly, I would have to say Dreaming Tree because that is that when you go through it, when you start to like a band and you're listening to the albums, and I started with those 3.
Yeah.
There's a song, you hear the songs that are kind of on the radio.
Yeah.
And then you find ones that you don't hear on the radio and that one really resonated with me.
Yes. Yes.
I love that song. So
it's a great
that
song.
Would be one.
Yes.
Especially if you think about the Gorge and the beauty of it, all that song fits in with it.
It really does.
I think I'd have to say Two Step too because
it's a jam every time.
I remember my second show. So the first show of the 2000 tour that was the first time I ever saw it. It ended the first night, and when I walked out of there, I remember saying to myself, well, I said it out loud, I think, but I said,
of course,
I said they can play that freaking song every night. I mean, it was just that good, because I had only heard the 6-minute version. But at the concert, it was the 14-minute version.
Hell yeah.
So those 2 would have to be on there.
And
I know Mike wants me to say Angel.
People are yelling at every concert. Angel! Like, we've all heard it. And I'm okay if he plays it. Like, I love it. It's a great song. Yeah. Whatever. I want to hear it. I've never heard it. Have you ever heard it?
Yes.
Live.
11 times because he asked me. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well, you gotta remember, I started a long time ago.
It's 500 shows. You've heard it 11 times. In the big picture, that's really not that many times within 500 shows. Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, that's a rarity for sure. But like, it's good. I've never heard it live, but it's funny because like I said, there is always someone yelling that from the crowd, and I love that because like, I wonder, does the band hear that? And while by no means do I want them to ask us what to play, I always want to be on the receiving side of that. Like, what do you have to give me every time? I wonder why? Why are there certain songs that are hardly ever played. And I'd be okay with the answer of, Renae, we just simply don't like playing that. Cool, I'm good. Now I know what the mystery is. But there's that mystery behind those songs that we know are out there, and we know like are even on albums that have been recorded in studios, and yet we never ever hear them. Like, where did they go, Dave? Where are they?
Yeah, but I don't know.
That's cool.
Or it could bring back a memory to them at the time. I don't know.
Absolutely. I've thought about that. And matter of fact, for the longest time until, well, I guess it would have been 2022 is when they opened in Austin and brought back Shotgun. And that was an amazing experience for us
that
all.
was a great show.
I had up until that point, and even still now, I don't know the story behind Shotgun. I don't know most things about like what these songs were wrote for, because I wasn't there. I haven't talked to the guys that wrote it. But like, in listening to that song and what I personally have taken from that song, I would imagine that there is a realm of that song that comes from a very personal place, and what that song is about in general is hard to talk about. And so I've always thought that the reason why he probably never sang Shotgun that often was because it was painful for him as a person, because we know that he's lost family due to, you know, gun violence and violence. Tragically. And so, you know, is that the reasons? And those are reasons that we don't need to know. We don't need to know their reasons for, you know, all of that. But it is questions that we talk about as fans. Like, I wonder why, right? You know, I wonder why we never hear that. And so Tiffany Adams King submitted this question. What song are you still chasing?
The one that we just said, the only one, Dreams of Our Fathers.
Dreams of Our Fathers.
But they've never played. I mean, there's songs like that I obviously never went to tracks or anything like that. So like People,
Ooh.
Spotlight, things they don't play anymore. I've never seen any of those. I mean, I guess one other song I guess I'm chasing is When I'm Weary, because they've only played it maybe 3 times. I wasn't at one of those. So those are the only 2 songs on an album that I've never seen that they played. Dreams of Our Fathers never played, but When I'm Weary is the only song on an album they played that I've never seen.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And it's funny that you brought up tracks, although how could you not, with the history of the band like this and where they've started, and so many live tracks that are available out now. And so if all of that is sounding like crazy and confusing to you, here's an opportunity to dig into the history of the band, because of course, when we have this much time with anything, there's just so much history to dig into. And so those words should be a little bit familiar. And if not, do some homework. We love to just send people down the rabbit hole of the Dave Matthews Band, because it's just so awesome, and there's just been so many cool things. But this question came from Ed in Kansas City, and he happened to mention tracks. He said, have you been to any live track shows? Of course, you just answered that.
Oh yeah, I have.
You have? Okay.
Well, no, I've never been to Tracks, the nightclub.
Right. But have you been to any of the live Tracks albums?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know all of them by heart, but I know.
Of course not. Yes.
I've been to the Fenway Park shows. I was at the Busch Stadium Tracks, Leroy's last show, the John Paul Jones show they did the live tracks for.
Yes.
Yeah. There's. I mean, I hate to say it, but I've probably been to maybe, if they're from 2000 and forward, I've probably been to about almost. Probably 75% of the tracks that have
That's amazing. Out. That's amazing. And so Ed also asked the question, in your time with this band, what are some of the opening acts that have really just stayed with you and you were like, damn, that was an amazing opening act?
Government Mule, Humphreys McGee, OAR. These are bands I never saw before, and then I saw them with one of my all-time favorite bands, although I liked them before Dave Matthews Band, the Black Crowes, that I saw open up for them.
Yes.
They'd probably have to say my favorite opening act, but I mean, I liked them before I even saw Dave Matthews. I actually saw them before I saw the Dave Matthews Band. So
damn, yeah.
Government Mule probably is one where I never had seen or heard. I mean, I knew the Allman Brothers, but I actually didn't know Warren Haynes played with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're definitely one that I see them every time they come around now.
Absolutely.
Michigan.
Still touring. I got to see them, I don't know, last year or 2 years ago, something like that. I mean, it blows me away, but also makes my heart so happy that this music that has been around like our whole lives, what feels like our whole lives, is still available in a live form. And so just so thankful for that. So last
Another
question.
one,
Yeah, go ahead.
another one, the John Butler Trio. They were amazing. I saw them open up for them, I believe, in Madison Square Garden once. They were great. I love them.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, let's see. Kevin Myers submitted this question. Was there ever a time that you thought that 500 shows was actually a possibility? Like, do you remember that time of thinking, God, I'm going to do it?
Not really. I
No,
mean,
it's all just been like, wee.
well, not really. It's funny because I distinctly remember this. I had seen the Grateful Dead. The one time I saw them with Jerry Garcia was at the Palace here in '95, and I remember standing to next some guy. So I'd never seen the Dave Matthews Band at that point. I remember sitting next to a guy, and I knew that people followed the Dead around, and he was talking to me. He was from Washington, D.C. I remember this, and he was talking about how it was his 234th show. And at that point, I mean, I was only 25, but I was like, my God, seeing a band that many times, that's pretty cool. You know, I mean, if you really love the band.
It is.
And I do remember at some point with my Dave Matthews Band journey, when I was getting around that number, I was like, oh my God, I've turned into that guy. I mean, I've seen him 234 times at that point. I mean, I remember wanting to get to like 300, but after that, I just keep going. It's not like I'm not like on this path to 600 or whatever. I mean, I hope they make it that far, to be honest with you.
Of course we do. Of course we do.
Yeah, so I guess I figured out a couple of years ago that this year would be the year I hit 500. If that answers that question, that's kind of when I realized, okay, it'll be 2024. That's when I'm going to have, that's when it's going to happen. Yeah.
It's so crazy. That's so crazy. Okay. I love this question. It came from Clay Kelly. What has been your biggest adventure when you are going to a show, like getting to a show? Have you ever had anything that was just like crazy, like, flights delayed, but you still made it by the first show, or like, something happened and you weren't planning? I mean, like any crazy adventures while getting to a show? There has to be.
I mean, I'm sure there are in the past. The one that comes to mind the most is last year. So I was going to the Irvine shows, but I also had a ticket to that show at the casino in Highland. So I left the day of, and we had a huge storm the night before, and to get to the Delta terminal, which is we're a hub in Detroit here, was flooded. So I mean, I couldn't get to there's no flights were going out. Yeah. So I couldn't get to the Delta terminal. I remember going to Mike's house. We were looking at Twitter, finding out, okay, the airport finally opened. And I was like, okay, I think I can make because then the flights just kept getting delayed. And I was like, all right, if I get on the 3:30 flight, I'll make it in time with the time change. I'll drive and I'll make it to that casino show. And then it was everything the bad that could happen just happened. I mean, obviously the airport was backed up. I mean, the flight kept getting delayed. They didn't have a pilot. We were on the plane. So long story short, we ended up taking off. By the time I landed, the show had already started. It was already an hour in, and I was 2 hours away, so I was never going to make it. So I went to the two Irvine shows were great, but I did end up missing that show.
Oh my gosh.
I can't think of anything else really that.
I mean, it's those stories though. Yeah,
I've had flights get delayed, but I've made it, and I've learned, you leave the day before just to make sure in case something happens like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like if you're just making that investment of not only your time but money, like you want to make sure you get to the show. Like that's the most important thing.
There was a show. I think it was 2007. People will know. Again, my memory gets. But it was Alpine. It was a Saturday, and I drove, and I think there were a ton of storms. And so I think the lots at Alpine were flooded. So, I mean, I'm driving from Michigan. So by the time I get I just remember it took forever. There was like a huge traffic jam. And I finally got parked. It was soggy everywhere. And I walked in and they were playing, I opened with two steps. So I got the wrong year. I'm pretty sure it's 2007, but I could be wrong. But I know whatever show they started with, people will know this because that lot was flooded and a lot of people missed some of it. But I made it. I did make it. But I mean, I didn't know that everything was flooded because back then, nobody knew, you know,
Right.
you didn't have GPS and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I'm just like, why am I in this long line? Why is it taking forever? This is
Right.
traffic for the show already? Because I mean, I feel
Right.
like I was in a lot. It took me like 3 hours when it should have taken me one at some point to get into
Oh
the
my
lot.
God. Oh my
Because I
God, that's
remember at one
crazy.
point I was like, well, okay, I'm not checking into the hotel. I'm going straight to the show. I'll just have to check in after.
Right, right. Yeah, you got to do
So
what
I
you
don't
got
know
to
if I got
do.
the year right, but I know that happened. So Alpine, that was one that I made.
That's so crazy. Question from Ryan Lee Henson. What venue have you been to the most? So is there a venue that you just like you've been to it more than any other venue?
Yeah, the Gorge.
Probably your home. Oh,
No, they don't play my home venue enough. You got to when you go to the Gorge, you get 3 shows. So
that's
yeah,
true. That's
I
true.
think if I remember correctly, I'm at 42. I think at the Gorge, something
Oh
like
my God.
that.
So when I said earlier that I don't like the Gorge, what were your feelings after being to the Gorge 40 times?
That's my favorite place. I mean, besides the fact that it's so pretty and it's
It's
amazing.
beautiful. It's not about that. It's not about that I don't want to go back. It's a beautiful place.
I mean, I can get how people, there are great places on the lawn. I've never really sat there. And I get how you could say, like, if you're on, it's just that big concrete, right? And it's not sloped that high. So if you're short like me, a lot of shows are seen like this between people, looking between people. So
yeah. Well, for me, it wasn't the venue. I mean, the venue is just magical.
Just
it's
the
lovely.
Experience. I get it.
It's the camping.
I'm not a camper, so yeah.
No, me either. I don't like to sweat. I don't want to do shit. I want people bringing me drinks. Like I want the vacation experience because I paid $10,000 to get to there, and you're telling me that I can't take a shower for 30 minutes. I have to take a drip shower for like 1 minute. That sounds terrible.
And I've got people that tease me like, how can you not camp out there? Because I'll stay in hotels for the most part.
Oh,
and
that's good.
you're talking about, the place that I end up staying a lot is an hour away. Let me tell you something. The older I get, yes. It's an hour after the show or 50 minutes, 45 minutes. And I'm like, I wish I could just go to bed, but I got another 20 minutes to get to the hotel. So
I bet that
I get that,
fun though, right? Like the bus ride is fun.
I love driving, so it's no big deal to me. But I do get tired early, a little bit more often than
every single one of us are getting older. I mean, we are we are not the age that we used to be or the age that we were when we found this band, right? And you said something that was such, like, you put it so perfectly, because, when talking about the band and talking about the history and how we are just so damn lucky to have had this band for over 30 years. And yes, I will put in lyrics anytime I can in a sentence. So just doing it. We have to at some point start thinking, because we're getting older, when we start having that like back pain after a concert and we're like,
knee pain,
fuck, how are we doing this? Like, and I'm gonna go back tomorrow and do it again and again and again. And like we're killing ourselves slowly because we're getting older. And so not only us are getting older, the band is getting older, right? Like everybody's moving that direction. And so before we hit record, you said, can you remember what you said about as far as like how much time we have and how much time we have had with them? Like, how did you put that out for me?
We're close. I hate to say it, but I think what I said was we're closer to the end than the beginning for the band live.
We are. And I hate that so much. Like, no one wants to talk about it. And I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to like harp on it, but like it is a reality that is going to happen. And so I'm such a believer in like being prepared for stuff like that, because like, if you're not prepared and then you turn your TV on or your best friend calls you and goes, oh my God, like I can't handle that pressure. So I got to like work. I got to work my way towards that. And so, yeah, there is that thought of how much time do we have left? And so when I hear people stories like yours, keep chasing your dreams, keep doing what you love. I mean, if you can do it, you're doing it. And we don't know how much time we have left with this band. For those of you that are listening to this, yes, most of us are not going to achieve 500 concerts. Most of us won't get past, sometimes 5. Sometimes even getting that first show in is a lot of work, because we all have lives. We're working, we have kids, we have things, right? Like there's the pets at home. Like, what do we do while we're gone? So, I mean, there's just so many things, and it costs money, and everything's so expensive now. And so getting to a show is really hard. However, I love listening to you guys chase this band, chase your dreams, because we don't know how much more time that we have. And so keep doing what you're doing. I mean, I think you've been so much fun to watch. And I told you that earlier about watching people as far as on social media and things like that. It's so fun to watch because it's fun to watch people who don't have lives similar to us, right? Like you're enjoyable to watch. You're out there, you're chasing your dreams, you're doing something that makes you happy. And honestly, like that's a beautiful thing because not everybody is living that life, right? Not everybody has found even that thing that fills their soul, like the Dave Matthews Band has for you. And so it's such a beautiful story that you have. And I was so excited about getting the opportunity to have you on the show, because for me, when I hear you've been to that many shows, my immediate thought is not how the fuck or why the fuck or any of those questions. It's like, oh my God, I'm so happy that he's had that much time to invest in himself and to chase his dreams, because so many people will listen to this story or watch this story on YouTube and be like, God, I mean, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should just do what I love or chase what I love. And so, your story is inspiring. It's not all about, people that, want to go, this is crazy, but it's not crazy. It's beautiful. And life has just given you those opportunities, and you've been the recipient of that time and watching this band grow and change. And so, my last question for you, and I have my answer. I think most people have their answer, and it's okay to say you don't have an answer. You don't want to weigh in on this, but like, is there a time frame since you've been a fan, looking back at all of this time? And you said your first show was like 1998, 99. Okay. So from 99 to 2024, that is a long time. And you have actually seen such a evolution of the band, some changes. Members that were once in the band are no longer there, and people have moved into the band that weren't there in the beginning. And so you've just seen a lot of changes. Yes, the music has changed, but in that evolution of the band and with different members in and out, is there a decade, if we say 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, and then we've got what is currently, we are in the 2020s, whatever, however we're saying it, like, is there a decade that just really sticks out to you as like a solid fucking decade for the Dave Matthews Band?
That is an interesting question, because I mean, there are certain songs from certain decades that they played that I like better than they do now. But then there are songs now that have gotten, and it's all personal for everybody.
Of course,
that have gotten better to me.
Me too.
so it's I know it's a cop out to say that, but I mean,
no, it's facts.
It's different. I mean, you can't. There's some decades. There's years you can't compare to each other because it's totally different.
Of course not.
My answer is no. There isn't really one.
Yes, and that's okay. That's okay. That's your answer. I do give that cop-out answer. I'm like, I love every decade, and every decade has been so very different for this band.
It really has.
Like, and there's no, every band that has had this time, this amount of time there's been changes that have occurred, because that's just life. Like, right, things happen, and you just either keep going on or you stop. And so for those people that do continue to go on, I mean, there's beautiful things in each decade for this band.
Yes.
But I do love to always say that this is my favorite time, right? Like, in looking back and listening to those early times in the 90s, and while everything was so beautiful and so perfect, and it's like watching something grow, right? Like, they started out and they were beautiful and it was wonderful and they were so talented, but now they are so seasoned with each other, right? Like, they know each other. They can feel like, oh, I know that he's got my back here and that we're going to do this. And like, the way that they work together as a family, like, being able to watch all of that has just been beautiful. And right now is when you can really see all that time that they have invested in each other, in the music, in their craft. And so that's the reason why I say right now is such a beautiful time. Not that those other times aren't beautiful, but it's the best time, is because they've never been better, right? Like, they are at a level that they've never been at before, just simply because time has not allowed that, right?
That's
And
true.
so, there's just so many different ways to look at that. But I think it's an interesting thing to break down decades, because we can see so many changes within that 10-year, and from the 90s to the 2000s, and from 2000s to 2010s, and like all the things that have changed, but that all those things had to happen in order for us to have the current band that we do right now. So it's just such a beautiful story. It's such a beautiful story. And that's, some things we like to talk about on this podcast is like all the different fan perspectives, because every single fan that's ever going to be on this show is going to have a completely different story and a completely different perspective and thoughts of why this band is working and when their best time was. And so I just think it is a beautiful story to see the impact, the imprint on so many hearts and minds that this music, this thing that so many people take for granted and put to the side of like things that we don't need, when actuality is that so. I think we have never needed a gift more than we need it right now. Music is something that can heal people. It can restore people. It can take you back to times, maybe better, brighter days, or take you to, just a place of solace where you can kind of get your brain, get a restart, if you will. And so it's never been a better time to talk about music, but it's never been a better time to talk about the Dave Matthews Band, because of course we have all of this time. And then also our favorite band is getting inducted into the Hall of Fame this October. So let's briefly talk about that. Like, is this like your team winning the Super Bowl? Like, what does it feel like to see this band that of course you love so much, like kind of be like, put into this team of musicians, this Hall of Fame of musicians?
Well, I think I speak for most fans of bands. I mean, there's a part of you that's like, you don't really care because you love this band anyway, so they're in your Hall of Fame anyway.
Of course, absolutely.
Need anybody else's.
Nope.
but on the other hand, it's nice to be able to, when you're with people that maybe don't know of the band or care as much, you're like, well, my band's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame too. So
is yours?
obviously a lot of people other than me agree that this is a great band.
Yes.
Kind of validation,
Absolutely.
you don't need it. You don't need it,
nice.
but it's nice to get.
Yeah, it's really nice to get. It's like when we meet that person, that random stranger in the cafe or whatever, and you find out that they're fans of the Dave Matthews Band, you're like, hi, like we're gonna be friends. I don't know if you get it, but like,
like you get it.
Yeah, like so it's really nice. It's so exciting to just be talking about that, and of course, as we move forward to October, we'll definitely talk about that more on the podcast. So if you're listening to this for the very first time, we've got some big things coming up in 2024, and yes, it is the band that's getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. But honey, I feel like the fans are too, because it takes the fans, right? Like, we are not just people that love this music. We've been supporting them and telling them how much we love them. And that really has taken them all this way. And so, it's for us too. It's like we're the proud parents of this band that we've invested time and money into. And we're just so excited to get to see them get into that Hall of Fame. So definitely stay tuned to the podcast. Each week we're going to put out a show. And as we get close to October, we'll start talking about the show traveling, because we're going to Cleveland. Did you know that the Space Between podcast is going to Cleveland?
That's awesome.
Yay, we're so excited. We're so excited. Again, this is it's just a once in a lifetime opportunity. And we know, you only get inducted once, right? Like there's that one time. And so this is such an exciting time in the world of this podcast. So definitely stay tuned. And if you are interested in sharing your journey with this band, I would love to have you contact me via social media in any way and just say, hey, I'd love to share my story with you. You don't have to have been to 500 shows. If you've never been to a show and you love this band, then you are the perfect candidate to be on this show, because again, I'm just gathering stories to make this documentary once the band has retired from public tours. And so we're so excited to be doing this. We're so damn lucky to be fans of this band that is still performing after 30 years. Michael, I can't thank you enough for just coming on the show and just telling us a little bit about, like, your journey is such a long journey, but it has just been filled with so much joy and fun things. And like, you've met a lot of people. And honestly, I think I can say this and you'll be like, yeah, you're right. Would you be the same person that you are now without the music and the world of the Dave Matthews Band?
No, honestly not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
everybody can say that.
Yeah,
Like
no,
you said.
I think so. I think so. You know, it's really for me. It's filled my heart and my soul and my just it makes me a better human. I love the music, and again, music has just had that it's just had that effect on me, and I know that other people feel the same way. That's why so many times I'll talk about music therapy, because like y'all, it's a real deal. I'm a nurse that telling you that that music is a real tool to help people, and so I'm going to talk about it until the day I die. So guys, keep listening. We've got so many episodes ahead on this podcast, and again, if this is your first time to listen, we have over like 120 episodes, and each one is a different band telling their journey with this exact same band, the Dave Matthews Band. So guys, stay tuned next week. Be sure to check us out on all the socials. And until then, peace, love, and Dave Matthews Band. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.